When I received my invitation from Kia to go to Telluride, Colorado to drive the new Telluride, I immediately had some preconceived notions. Here is yet another SUV, another truckish SUV trying to be something that it's not. Well, if you saw that launch video, you'll know that it surprised me in many ways, and one of the biggest is the interior space. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Recently, I read an article on Jalopnik, how they believe and many consumers believe that new cars are overrated. And I sat in here and I thought about this a lot. I don't think this is overrated at all. In fact, I think if you're looking for a three-row crossover, if you're looking for an SUV, this would be extremely exciting to get behind the wheel for the first time. When you see it, experience it. What is overrated is the price of new vehicles. And I know I beat this into the ground. Everything is so damn expensive. And one of the strongest things that Kia has done with pretty much every single vehicle I've been in the past 2 years, they offer some of the best value for your dollar. And the Telluride is the epitome of that, because what you're getting here is something like, I just got out of the new Maserati Levante and that thing was like $130,000. This has a better designed interior than that vehicle on almost every single level. Now, and I'm talking more aesthetics. I can't really speak to fit and finish because we don't know how this is going to age, but in terms of overall design, you're getting so much for your $40,000 or $45,000 in the case of this vehicle, the way that it's spec'd out. You have a great use of materials. Yes, you have this fake matte wood, which is going to look like wood to most people. You have alloy looking materials. You have a great use of physical buttons that feel high quality without feeling, like they're straight out of a garbage bin. You have a physical shifter that when you get in here, you appreciate it so much. You just slam it into the gear you want. There's no rotary knobs. There's no digital stick. There's no delay in shifting. It's so tried and true, the things that they're adding to their interior space. And then you have the comfort aspect and the quietness. Now, speaking of quietness, if you opt for the $2,000 Prestige package, you get this microfiber-ish headliner, which helps to keep things quieter, has more absorption properties to it. And you also get heated and cooled seats in the second row, something you don't even get on many luxury cars. And I'm going to go right back to this. Value. It doesn't matter if you're in electronics, the food industry. Many companies will focus on trying to pad spec sheets or try to sell you shit that you don't need, or even features that are just kind of gimmicks and don't work. And I think Kia has gotten to the point where they know what people want. And they've focused energy and money on some of these technologies that just work really well, and they're no longer gimmicks. The safety suite, for example, lane departure warning and assist works great. The autonomous braking system, if you're coming up on somebody too fast, it will slow you down. It works without being overreactive where it's freaking you out. And then there's smart technology too, with the advent of LCD screens in your instrument cluster here, so you can see when the doors open, where you can see speedometer, and you can figure it however you want, fuel economy. They've taken their side view cameras and integrated them into the screen. So when you turn on your turn signal, you can see what's on the left or right side of you on the highway, without just having to rely on an audible alert. And this is existing technology they've already put in the car. They've already invested the money into the cameras on the screen. Why not use it to show a video feed? And that's something they're doing here. And again, this is creative, smart use of the tech that's already here. Now, in terms of everything else, infotainment, for example, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, it's quick. The interface is easy to use. Yes, it's completely reliant on touch, which I don't like. I wish there was a physical command knob for it, but there's just enough of a lip here to rest a finger so you can use your other finger to swipe and utilize this the way that you would want. The menus, the graphical user interface, the black levels are good, and of course, it doesn't lag or freeze up like a lot of the cars used to. And then you get to the physical knobs, buttons, and switches, which are all at a high level. And I know when somebody looks at this, one of the biggest complaints I hear is Kia and Hyundai are masters at being inspired or just straight up copying Audi and BMW in terms of interior stuff and even exterior design. And where I don't have a problem with it is they do it so well, and it's so intuitive and so usable, and it doesn't look like a knockoff. It doesn't feel like a knockoff. It's great. and I don't have to pay twice as much to get a lot of the same things that work here just as well as they work in those other cars. Now, am I calling this, you know, an affordable luxury car? No. There's elements you're going to see where it doesn't have the solidity, it doesn't have some of the quality, the tactile feedback, some of the software is not as developed, but most people don't care about that. Most people don't have that kind of money to spend. So let's talk about some of the other good stuff. Let me get in the back seat. Now, people are obsessed with three-row crossovers. Why? Not sure, because most of them suck. The third row is totally unusable unless you're a garden gnome. When the back seats are up, it totally screws up your rear cargo space. So Kia attempted to fix that without going to a minivan. When you open up this rear door, holy crap, is it huge. And some of this makes sense. It is on a shared with a minivan platform of theirs. More on that later. Now the back seat room, people talk about this, oh, can I fit a car seat in there? Well, I'm not out making a bunch of kids. Well, maybe I am, who knows? But one thing I've discovered, car seats are a must for transporting my Don Julio 1942. So if I don't want to break the bottle and I still want to booze while I'm driving, I got that here. And also, it's really safe for all my Rogaine boxes because they're sensitive, and my hair plug sponsorship hasn't come through yet. But putting this in here, the thing that I've noticed is when you put it in here, it almost completely does not affect the front passenger room. You could have the seat in a normal position without being all jammed up and all curled up in the front seat. And I think this is a huge pro for somebody that is truly looking to use this as a family hauler, and you, for some reason, don't want a minivan. You can still use this. It's pretty practical. But let's get into the third row. Like many Hyundais and Kias, when you approach the rear with the key, if you have it turned on, it will open this automatically standing here. But if not, you have a power lift gate, as to be expected, and a three-row crossover with usable space in the back. And I think, you know, that's a key element of this. There's a little bit of a recline here for the third row passengers, which is great because it doesn't have to be completely upright. And then you can get just enough of an angle where you can fit probably 10 bags of groceries and other things that you can fit back here without having to always put the third row down. And that's my point. Now, when you put it down, headrests go down. It's a manual procedure, but boom. Now, you know, this is a wider ass end. It has a ton of cargo capacity, and when you flip that second row down, assuming you don't have your bottles of booze in the second row of seats, you can utilize this as a true cargo master. It's not as much as a minivan. You lose a lot of like load floor. It's very high compared to that, but probably for most people, you're gonna like this. But let's sit in the third row and see how that is. All right, with the captain's chairs, I'm gonna show you how I get back here. First, you just crawl in. You can literally crawl in here like a normal person. There's enough tunnel room here to like sneak through. And when you get in the back seat, all right, in the upright position, it's kind of uncomfortable. There's a strap on your right side or your left. You kind of pull it up, and then you can recline. This seat is pretty much all the way back. With the car seat, I can still fit back here, and it's not a total joke. If you didn't have that and you had a normal person who wasn't being a total dick, you could literally fit back here almost like this was, it's not as comfortable as a minivan, the third row, but it's pretty damn close. You'd have to go to an extreme full-size SUV to get this level of comfort. So I would say this is, you know, if you're looking for a three-row that's not a monstrosity, this is as close as it's gonna get with the comfort and features that you want. All right, that's enough of the interior and the exterior of the Telluride. Now I'm gonna take it in the shop, show you the underbody, talk about the all-wheel drive system, the engine, then take it out on the road and give you my final thoughts of what works and what doesn't work. You are looking at the new Kia Telluride on the BenPack lift. And if you've watched these videos before, you may think, well, this looks a bit familiar. And that's because it is. It's made in the same West Point, Georgia plant as the Kia Sorento you may have seen, and the Kia Sedona, which shares this same platform. Now I asked Kia, well, what's the difference? And they said, well, it's not the same, it's shared, but it's not. Well, when you look at this, namely compared to the Sorento, it's really, really hard to tell any differences. You still have the same stamped steel lower control arms, the same subframe carrier, The only difference in the front that I can tell is they switched to an aluminum knuckle, and that's typically used for reinforcement, higher loads. This is a heavier vehicle, and people might actually off-road it. But other than that, it's the same front-wheel drive architecture. This has a 3.8-liter V6 in it, but you're seeing the same automatic transmission and much of the same parts. And of course, they're going to change things like spring rates, the damper valving, the sway bars, and of course, bushings and all that. But really, when you look at this, it's very similar. Now this, you can tell, has been off-roaded during the press launches. This is mud, not rust. Don't confuse the two on video. And you can tell the plastic cover has been sheared off of here. Typically, this is all covered up. But, it goes to show you, some of the creative marketing showing this thing tearing it up. Again, this is still a front-wheel drive architecture. Most people are not going to be driving like this. Don't confuse it for some crazy off-road machine. There's no real skid plate here to protect all this. But enough of that, let's take a look at the back. In the back, you're going to see plenty of space with this multi-link rear suspension. Now, this has typical coil springs separated from the shock absorbers, stamped steel lower control arm subframe, but this does also have aluminum knuckles in the rear, much like the front, which is different from the Sorento and the Sedona. Now, this has the same, at least visually, is the identical rear differential that's in the Sorento all-wheel drive. You might wonder, well, what are they doing differently? Typically with this, and with this vehicle specifically, they're changing a lot of the programming and the logic of the body control modules, the sensors, the ride height sensors, to give you more off-road stuff. So it's all electronically programmed how this rear differential is working. And again, like I said, it's on demand. So it's sending power to the rear when it needs it, but it's primarily front-wheel drive. Now, it does have a four-wheel lock mode when you need it, like in snow, but don't expect to be driving around in that all the time. It's really just to get you out of sticky situations, and it's going to go right back to front-wheel drive. If it senses an overload condition, or, well, really, it's going to be in front-wheel drive most of the time for fuel efficiency. But that's enough of this. You've seen the back, the front. It's time to get it on the road, talk about the good and the bad, and then hit the final thoughts. Setting off in the new Telluride. If you saw my launch video, you're going to know a lot of my initial impressions, but now it's time to dig a little bit deeper. One of the main things about the Telluride is it only comes with a 3.8 liter. It's a non-forced induction motor, no turbos. So there's a pro and con to it. One is it doesn't feel like it has got the best performance. It feels just adequate at best. But the second part of that, which is more positive, assuming this doesn't have any catastrophic issues, it's going to be a lot easier to work on. There's less heat to deal with. You don't have all of that. And for longevity's sake, it might be a better option. Now, the next part is suspension. Now, this does not have adjustable dampers or variable dampers. It is the most basic setup possible. And one of the great things about that is they've tuned it on the softer side, which means it is comfortable over every single pavement type. The negative part is, well, it doesn't handle the greatest. It feels very floaty. It doesn't respond. It doesn't turn in. But that's the thing. You're not buying a three-row crossover to have the greatest handling. But I will say it doesn't handle as well as like the minivan competitors, like the Pacifica, the Odyssey, and even the Sedona. This doesn't feel as nimble as that. Now, since you don't have adjustable dampers or variable dampers, you basically are stuck in one mode all the time, and that is soft. And I found on every single pavement type, at least in my area, that is a huge pro. But when you pound it around the turns, that's one of the drawbacks. It's just, it feels like a giant couch on wheels. And like I said before, you're not buying this. You're not buying the Telluride to go tear up the corners, but it's definitely indicative of how they've set this up. They wanted it to be on the softer side. Now, when I come to a stop here, let's cover some of just the straight line acceleration. Get it out of the way. You can listen to it, you can hear, make a judgment for yourself. I don't think it's going to be a huge deal, but you know, it's not the fastest thing on four wheels. The quietness, the overall refinement, the great features of it outweigh a lot of the negatives in terms of outright power, which it doesn't have, and some of the softer setup. I love driving this because you don't have to hold this to a high standard like you would the Stinger. The Kia Stinger, my problem with it was they were trying to compete with touring GT cars, the Germans, and you have to deal with handling, you have to deal with suspension setup, you have to deal with performance, transmission, all the performance factors you don't have to worry about with the Telluride. They put the money where they need to. Great interior space, configurability of the back seats, the suspension setup is softer but great for normal driving, and you don't have the complication of having adaptive dampers. You don't have a turbo on this motor. It's just pretty much as simple as possible, and I think that's what Kia does great. They pick and choose what they need versus kind of overcomplicating everything. But you know, that's enough of this. You're gonna get the hint when you test drive this. Let's get into the shop and talk about the final thoughts. Final thoughts on the new Telluride. Now, Kia is at their best when they're combining multiple facets. Simplicity. You have a naturally aspirated V6, no turbo. You don't have adjustable suspension or any exotic suspension components. Yet, it still is just adequately powered. It has a great ride quality for most of the people that are going to be utilizing this. And then you get to the interior and you can see where they injected the right amount of money there. Like super comfortable seats, heated and cooled seats in the front row and in the second row if you opt for it. You have adjustable color of the ambient light, which you even have a color picker for that, which a lot of cars even up to $60,000 don't have that. And it's all the functionality, like the HUD, the safety suite, all of these tech features work. And they combine it into a price point that most normal people can afford. You're getting a lot of what you get in like the $60,000 to $70,000 price range in like the 30s and low $40,000 price range. And if you're not a brand snob and you're looking at an SUV, that's why this is so good. Now, the problems are, it does not handle very well. It's not quick at all. This is not a driver's vehicle. And if you're looking for better handling, you do have to go up in price point because that's not what this is about. The second negative part, and it may be a pro, is the audio system. The Harman system in here, when I first got in, I thought it seems very echoey. I checked the sound, the surround sound wasn't on, or the 3D or 2D audio surround sound wasn't on, which I toggled that and made it even worse. And our audio engineer, Brian the Hammer, said, well, they did a great job with frequency response. It's really flat in the mid to upper end, but it lacks bass. It has literally no bass response, and it could be sub placement. But we found that helping reverb was just adjusting the bass level just a little bit, raising it up, and it kind of cleaned it up, but it doesn't have very good imaging. So while it measures pretty well in certain ways, it doesn't sound particularly the greatest. But other than that, I think that pretty much sums this up. If you don't want a minivan, Kia knows that most people don't want minivans. So they've reskinned this kind of architecture into like this truck. And it's not really a truck, but it gives you the feeling that you're driving one. It has a usable third row, which is one of its best things, and a super comfortable interior. If you're looking for that, check it out. Thanks for watching this. I'll see you next time.
This savage geese, I hate him, I hate him. I'm gonna show you how to get back at him on Yelp and all that other stuff.